episode begins on day 1. On his phone, a police officer hears a message from his kid requesting a sick day. Infuriated, he and his buddy get into the car and play it again to her. According to him, his son is asking his partner Tracy as the latter would decline. They organize a police car convoy to raid a residential residence via their radios. Officers arrive in a vehicle equipped with firearms and a battering ram in order to break into the house.
Get your mum. Excuse me, love, what are you doing? Yeah. For fuck's sake, love.
Why'd you need guns for the thing?
Base, this is Bravo. Just calm yourself down, mate. Yeah. Don't say another word.
A man stands on the steps while a lady screams and raises her hands. They pass the gentleman and peer into the inside rooms. They claim to have located the perpetrator and take him into custody after discovering a small kid in bed. His elder sister collapses on the floor after exiting the restroom. The previous officer enters with a search warrant and identifies himself as D.I. Bascombe, Ashley Walters. Bascombe arrests the youngster on suspicion of murder and refers to him as Jamie Miller. He reads his rights to him. When the police and their son leave the house, the rest of the family follows. While the father maintains his innocence, the mother discloses that her kid is just 13-year-old. He approaches the vehicle window and assures Jamie that everything will be well. Jamie looks upset from the rear of the car. He attempts to explain that he hasn't done anything wrong, but Bascombe interrupts and instructs him to hold off until they reach the station. He advises him to get a lawyer when he is questioned. Derek, who is seated next to him, is introduced by him as the proper adult to arrest. Derek from Doncaster Social Services puts himself forward. Bascombe then informs Jamie that he may choose Derek or one of his own parents to be his grown-up. As they make their way through the streets to the police station, the talk gets quieter. Bascombe checks Jamie in with the desk sergeant when he arrives. Jamie requests counsel and provides the officer with his detail. Additionally, he requests that his father serve as the proper adult to make the arrest. The officer informs him that he would be detained for a whole day in order to interview him. His father shows up, but the door is locked. Jamie finds it difficult to focus as the officer begins to explain the next steps. After that, he is put in a cell. In order to inquire about the arrest, D.I. Bascombe visits Jamie's parents. He claims that a duty solicitor will be provided. Although his wife, Manda, concurs, Jamie's father, Eddie Stephen Graham, is not pleased with this.
No, he has. Excuse me, love.
Oh, fucking hell, how much do you want a cigarette, right? The dad? I don't see it, mate, I don't. Oh, I don't think anyone's actually been in the school yet. Go and have enough.
I'm going to have a walk. All right. His charge is he's underage. The councilman. Cross that bridge when we come to it. Coffee, love.
No, thanks.
Bascombe informs Eddie that Jamie has selected him as his suitable adult, allowing him to be with him and provide assistance during specific times. Bascombe asks Eddie whether Jamie has told him anything about the case, because if he has, he cannot be the right adult and his case will be compromised. He maintains that Jamie has done nothing and that he doesn't know anything. Lisa, Jamie's sister, is adamant on remaining, and when she asks her mother what will happen, she responds that it was merely an error. After that, the camera tracks D.S. Frank, Bascombe's companion, as she moves around the station. Bascombe asks her whether she is concerned about Eddie when they are seated at her desk. She claims she isn't, but when she presses him for an explanation, he starts talking about a previous instance in which it took them months to realize what the father was doing to the youngster. I don't see it, she adds. An officer who is following Bascombe throughout the station asks him where Jamie will be placed if he is released. They can deal with that later, he replies. Because he's being accused of killing someone with a kitchen knife, he asks Tracy over the phone if his son Adam is attending school. The nurse is conducting her examination in Jamie's cell. He is a smart lad who isn't weak, she adds. Eddie is present. Jamie sobs and keeps telling his father that he hasn't done anything. He responds, of course, when he's asked if he believes him. Then, when Jamie's lawyer shows up, the nurse submits her evaluations to the desk. He starts by introducing himself as Paul Barlow and speaking to Jamie's relatives. Although the family is dissatisfied with their current situation, he claims that this is what happens when a serious crime is committed. He claims that there isn't much he can do to improve the situation at the moment. To learn more about the situation, he instead goes to talk to Bascombe and his partner. Bascombe tells him that the event occurred last night at 10:30 p.m. Since they are still searching for the victim's family, nothing has been reported to the media as of yet. They disclosed that they collected blood since Jamie's arm had scrapes and there was blood at the location. When Jamie is having pictures and specimens taken, the booking officer calls Eddie to the medical suite. The solicitor, Paul, enters and introduces himself. The officer requests Jamie's phone passphrase after taking his fingerprints and mouth swab, but Paul and Eddie advise him not to. After drawing blood, they ask him to undress completely so they may conduct a strip search. Even when his father attempts to say no, they believe it's crucial for a severe crime to find out whether he's hiding anything or has any additional wounds. Despite Eddie's obvious rage, Paul assures him that he will help Jamie's defense. He therefore observes as the police carry out his search. Paul then leads Eddie and Jamie into a room for a conversation. He begins by questioning Jamie and concludes that he is a bright youngster. Paul instructs Jamie to remain silent about some aspect of the crime, but not all of them. Paul claims that both he and Eddie are able to speak up for Jamie when they enter the interview. Jamie asserts his innocence once more. Eddie follows Paul outside and admits he has no idea what he is doing. He assures him that it's acceptable to be yourself and that he shouldn't answer for Jamie because he doesn't want to make a mistake. Eddie is unhappy. Eddie and Jamie return inside to sit. He wants Jamie to give him a final look and to be honest with him. Jamie assures his father that he is speaking the truth and reiterates that he did not do anything. As they enter the interview room with Bascombe and his partner, D.S. Frank, Eddie is visibly relieved. Bascombe begins by inquiring about Jamie's activity the previous evening. No comment, he says. He inquires about his academic records. Although Bascombe acknowledges that Jamie is an excellent student, he claims that for the past year or two there have been issues with his behavior. When asked about his friends, he responds that he has nothing to say. He asks him about love and sex and shows him images of women in their underwear that Jamie posted on social media. Bascombe reveals to him the critical comments Jamie has made underneath the images. When asked if he thinks women are beautiful, he answers in the positive. When asked if he has a girlfriend, he gives a negative response. They are too old, he says when asked whether he wants his pals to look like the ladies he posts about on social media. Then Bascombe gives him a photo of Jamie with a group of pals. He assures him that if he tells him who they are, he won't put them in any danger. He identifies them as Ryan and Tommy. According to him, he has known Ryan since year 4 and Tommy since year 1. When questioned if he was with them last night, he remained silent despite saying that they enjoy going into town and hanging together.
No comment. What time did you get home? Clothes from last night, but they think they...
Jamie, do you know a girl other people would describe?
Friendship.
Were you attracted? See, her parents have told us that...
Or before, which means between night...
Were you following her?
He claims he can't recall what he was wearing the previous evening. In response, Bascombe displays a picture of trainers that the cops believes to be his. Bascombe inquires as to if he has a pair of white and blue Nike Air Max sneakers, to which he replies that he cannot tell whether they are his. Yes, he replies. He responds, I don't know, but maybe, when asked if he wore them back then. DS then, asking whether he knows Katie Leonard, Frank pulls out a picture of her. Yes, he replies. Although she is not his age, they both speak English. Yes, he responds when asked if they get on. Frank points out Katie's comment on his Instagram posting that if other people would characterize them as friends, he responds that he is unsure if they are friends. He informs Jamie that she has passed away, but he says it's quite shrewd of him to inquire if he already knew that. Jamie claims he has nothing to say when Frank asks him to explain their friendship. When she asks him why he won't discuss their friendship but will discuss others, he responds that he wouldn't even consider it a friendship. He denies being drawn to her when asked if it became sexual. Frank responds that her parents reported Katie leaving the house at 8:30 p.m. when Bascombe asked if he was going to see her last night. They disclosed that she was slain less than an hour earlier, perhaps between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m., and that they discovered her corpse at the parking lot shortly after 10:30 p.m. Jamie responds that he has no idea where he was. When they ask Eddie what time Jamie arrived home, he responds that he wasn't since he was on call. Frank then asks Jamie if he met Katie there or he was following her. Neither, he says. He denies killing her when Bascombe asks. Bascombe then tells Frank that Katie was stabbed 7 times all over. When Frank asks Jamie if he knows the number, Bascombe asks Jamie if he knows what a CCTV is. Interrupting, the lawyer requests a private meeting and a break. Eddie declines, stating that Jamie has nothing to conceal. Bascombe discloses that they have created a chronology of his and Katie's activities by examining CCTV footage of them. In the first picture, Jamie is wearing the Nike Air Max alongside what looks to be Tommy and Ryan. After spending an hour with them, he departed. After that, he roamed about for a while. They spotted him outside a store at 9:02 p.m. He was near the library at 9:17 p.m. They captured him on CCTV at the end of the road at 9:43 p.m. They then spot Katie on the security camera. According to Bascombe, they saw Jamie following her, but they are unsure of when he first noticed her. He asked his father why he was following her, and he is instructed to respond. She is seen crossing a road at 9:46 p.m. and Jamie does the same 1 minute later. Jamie refuses to respond as Bascombe keeps asking why he was following her. He says he hasn't done anything wrong when Bascombe asks if he wants to tell them what occurred. Bascombe then announces that he will broadcast some video of Jamie and Katie fighting in the parking lot the previous evening. They seem to be fighting while he plays the video. Jamie shoves Katie as she tries to push her away to depart. He then drops to the ground when she pushes him back. In response, Jamie rises, seizes Katie, wrestles her to the ground, and then seems to stab her many times. Bascombe asks Jamie, who is crying, how he managed to get home without being seen. They are aware that he threw away his clothing, but they are unsure of where he kept his trainers. They know. He says it doesn't seem good based on the CCTV footage and the knowledge that there would be blood on the trainers. If Jamie wants to explain why, he asks him. He ends the interview as Jamie is still crying. Jamie is left with his father as the officers and solicitor leave. Jamie tries to talk to Eddie and touches his shoulder, but he is unable to even look at him. What have you done? He eventually says, distraught. Eddie ultimately embraces Jamie as he insists it wasn't him. Adam is called by D.I. Bascombe, Ashley Walters, at the start of the second episode of Adolescence to inform him that he would probably be visiting his school. He is reminded that they would have sent a younger person by D.S. Misha Frank, Phi Massey. Mrs. Fenimore welcomes them and informs them that they have just been allowed to re-enter. Telling Tommy that the cops are on their way, Ryan calls for him. Jamie Miller, Owen Cooper, has not responded to either. Tommy claims that when the police visited his home, they inquired about the knife. Ryan wants Jamie to stay out of trouble. Adam Amari Bacchus receives the word from his father. He is harassed by Fredo, Austin Haynes, until the instructor steps in. Mrs. Bailey, Hannah Walters, and Mr. Hutchinson, Craig Chittendam, two educators discuss school security. Opening a grieving support room was something Mia Taylor mentioned. Charlie McSweeney's character Shaun and his companion Past. They discuss assaulting Jamie. Fatima Bojang's character Jade gets sent to the office. Misha and Bascombe interview her. There is also Mrs. Fenimore, Joe Hartley. Jade is informed by Bascombe that although they have detained a person of interest, they do not possess a murder weapon.
Before last, okay? We still haven't found the murder weapon. You can also come and talk to her. Thank you. Take care. Thank you. Yeah, sure. It was dark, I
get
know.
that. I get it.
I know, I get that. I'm just saying, she made...
Can't send you to isolation. No problem.
A little bit too much, but
Mrs. Fenimore, that would be useful, right?
Now, they're here because they can respect.
They require further details. According to Jade, her best friend was Katie. Before stating that all they need to know is that Katie is dead, she starts talking about Adam. Katie wouldn't approach Jamie. According to Jade, she implies that they are attempting to place the responsibility for everything on Katie. She cries until they grant her permission to go. Misha and Bascombe then address a class. The children may be able to assist, Bascombe said, adding that they haven't located the murder weapon. At last, Faraz Ayub's character, Mr. Malik, walks into his classroom. Misha and Bascombe talk privately about the chances of finding the knife. If they can't locate it, Bascombe fears Jamie will have a negotiating chip. Additionally, he notes that they have no ulterior motive. Misha is asked by Bascombe to keep an eye out for any children who could act out in class. Jonathan Ojinaka's character, Mr. Curtis, and his students are the next people they see. Adam gets ridiculed by Fredo in front of his father. Before the gun goes off, Bascombe talks to them about the crime. Everyone runs outdoors. Bascombe discusses his school reports with Mr. Malik. Mr. Malik asks if they are permitted to speak outside. He is asked about Jamie by Bascombe. These children are impossible, according to Malik. Jade screams like a banshee and assaults Ryan. While Ryan is getting medical care, Bascombe and Misha talk to him. Because he desired a black eye, Bascombe tells him about how he ran into a bus shelter. Ryan acknowledges that he values popularity. According to Ryan, Tommy's father forbade him from speaking. According to Bascombe, they are interested in Jamie's motivation and intentions. Ryan believes Jamie was acting normally that particular evening. They didn't discuss anything specific, they simply hung together. Jamie never expressed his emotions.
sit down.
I don't know. That depends what Ryan decides. No, I don't.
Yes, you do, love.
No, you can't. Everything.
Okay? Yeah. Privately?
Private.
All right.
Take
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Adam, I had stuff going on.
Ads. Hey, so you've,
According to Ryan, he has no knowledge about Katie. He asserts that he had no idea what Jamie was planning to do. According to Ryan again, Katie and Jamie were not friends. He quickly departs without telling them anything about the knife. Jade discusses visiting Katie's residence with Mrs. Bailey. Her parents probably wouldn't want to see her. Jade wonders if she is in jeopardy. Mrs. Bailey believes she is aware of her predicament. She tries to chat with Jade about everything, and Jade is at loss on what to do. She asserts that she has no other partners. Mrs. Bailey offers to speak with her. Jade won't talk to any more shrinks. Adam locates his father and requests a private conversation. Bascombe asks his kid in private if he has any information that may be useful. Adam claims he doesn't understand. He asks if he has been looking at Instagram. The content in Katie's message is shown to him by Adam. He then provides him with an overview of the blue and red pills. Adam informs him about all the incel stuff and the 80-20 rule. According to Bascombe, this constituted bullying.
No, I don't.
Adam claims he could show his father 15 more texts that Jamie received. Every one of them is saying the same thing. Bascombe inquires as to whether Katie was in charge of the incel work. Adam claims that because they are 2 years younger than him, he doesn't know them.
Adam,
Bascombe asks his kid if he is affected by anything on Instagram. Adam discloses that he is okay and doesn't post on Instagram. Misha and Mrs. Fenimore are then informed by Bascombe that they made a mistake with everything related to Instagram. Because Fenimore unfortunately doesn't know about the incel issue, Misha informs her about Andrew Tate and the involuntary celibate. Bascombe likens the school to a holding cage as they depart.
Shite.
All good. Thank you very much.
Well, it's good.
Appreciate it. Mr. Malik just walking in and out.
Some good students. My school was a bit like this. Mate, that's it.
I do love him very much.
B. Do you know what I mean?
I get it. What's up?
It's not Jamie is. Everyone will remember.
According to Misha, she has an excellent teacher, but her school was like this, and children just require one thing to feel good about themselves. She is against having children. Despite his deep affection for Adam, Bascombe also never desired them. The fact that the criminals always get ahead bothers her. The fact that nobody will remember Cathy irritates her. Bascombe thinks she is mistaken. He makes the decision to talk to Ryan again. Bascombe follows Ryan as he runs out a window. Eventually, Bascombe corners him. He asks Ryan what he thinks the term incel implies. He should talk to Tommy, Ryan advises. Bascombe queries if he assisted Jamie in obtaining the knife. According to Ryan, he didn't. Bascombe takes hold of him, shakes him, and repeats the question. Ryan acknowledges that he used his knife. Jamie would merely frighten her, he believed. Ryan maintains that he is unable to locate the knife. To get Ryan into the squad car, Ryan and Misha attack him. Misha is instructed by Bascombe to discharge Jamie as they now have everything they require. He wants to get something solved. Returning to the school, Bascombe talks to Adam. To get a bite to eat, he extends an invitation together with the other pupils. Jade exits the school. At Katie's memorial, Eddie Stephen Graham's Jamie's father delivers flowers. The majority of the first episode was set in the police station, while Jamie and Katie's school is the setting for this one. Detectives are there to attempt and discover the weapon of the crime, the knife that was used to wound Kate, and to acquire a better picture from the teachers and pupils. They aren't particularly supportive though, and it's difficult to get them to converse. The personnel and teachers are obviously undercompensated and lack enthusiasm for their jobs. The pupils are also rather challenging and unruly. After a while, however, Detective Bascombe's son, Adam, provides some unexpected assistance. Adam explains the true meaning of the emojis to his father, ignoring Katie's remarks about Jamie's Instagram posts. Jamie may have been the target of bullying from Katie, who called him an incel. Members of this online group typically hold negative opinions of both men and women who engage in sexual activity and feel they are incapable of attracting women sexually. They provide further information on Jamie and Katie as well as maybe a motive. I must admit that it was very awesome to watch Bascombe chase after Ryan while the camera followed them. As it happens, Ryan handed Jamie the knife, but he had no idea that he would use it. Jamie's father Eddie delivers flowers to the scene of Katie's murder as the episode comes to a close. The murder occurs 3 months after the third episode begins. Briony, a clinical psychologist, arrives at a correctional facility. She tells a police officer she wants to see Jamie because she heard he was involved in a violent altercation. She is adamant when the officer asks if it is pertinent. The officer asks Bryony how often she has seen Jamie after he got into a fight with another prisoner on CCTV.
I saved you half my sandwich and there's no tomatoes, there's no salad. What, you think that's weird? You're looking better than last time. Do you see your grandparents much?
I don't know. Like bread.
She responds that the other psychiatrist has only visited 3 times compared to her 5 visits. She requests that he refrain from explaining to her what the other therapists are doing. She explains she has to have a hot chocolate first, then gets a box of marshmallows out of her purse and adds them before the officer passes her through. She then introduces herself to Jamie and gives him the hot chocolate. They exchange a grin. She offers half of her lunch as well. Jamie informs her that she sounds like a grandmother once they start chit-chatting. They chuckle. He responds that they are his dad's parent because his mother didn't get along with hers when she inquires about his grandparents. However, his grandfather is similar to his father in that they are set in their ways. He characterizes his grandfather and father as men. The psychologist starts talking about what it means to be a man. Jamie, however, interrupts her and claims that she has only started talking about manly topics since he labeled her a grandmother. He seems irate as he claims that she asked real questions when she initially came to see him and that now it seems like she is attempting to deceive him. He claims he doesn't want to discuss his father. He then requests to read the notes she has made about him. She claims she can't show him, and he is aware of that, but he tells her she works for him even though she has been a member of his team. Instead, she informs him that she is composing an independent report on pre-sentence offenses, which the court will read to get insight into Jamie's character and his comprehension of the allegations. He begins to yawn and respond with a smile when she asks whether he finds her boring. She claims she needs to talk to him about a number of topics in order to further comprehend him, but he remains distant.
Does your...
No, that's weird. We all do.
Okay, that's okay.
And he...
Pretend he didn't see.
Instead, she offers to talk to him about the day by asking him the questions she has written down. She begins by inquiring about the altercation he had. She wants to know why he got into the altercation, but he claims it was nothing. He claims that because of the quarrel, the other boy hit him first, but it makes no difference. She adds that she also wrote down her desire to discuss what it's like for him to be a guy. She claims that the question is too huge and the fight question is too tiny when he is unable to respond. So she speaks more casually and directs the discussion instead. He requests to view her notes once again after she clarifies that it isn't a scam. He is not really in command, she informs him. Instead, they resume their conversation when she inquires as to whether his father approves of his employment. He describes his father's demeanor when Bryony questions him. Jamie becomes defensive once more when asked whether his father gets upset. He continues this time, however, and tells how his father once tore down a shed in a fit of rage. Although Bryony claims she is only curious about Jamie's perception of his father, Jamie still believes she is testing him. He claims that his father is nice and non-judgmental. He claims that although his father enjoys all sports, he would rather miss physical education since he dislikes them all. He becomes agitated when he recalls how his father used to take him to football on Saturdays. He recalls that his father would just turn away in embarrassment when he wasn't excellent at football. He is upset once again when she asks him how that embarrassment affected him since he thought she would say his dad wasn't ashamed. He says he dislikes lying and she adds she won't be lying if she stated that. He thinks it's inappropriate that he is there and wants to ask Bryony a question as they continue to discuss his family. Can you get me out of this place? He says. She responds that she is unable to. He questions why he couldn't be placed in a real prison rather than the madhouse. She refers it as a secure training facility. He is furious and claims that the other lads constantly yell and rock back and forth. Rising to his feet, he wants to know which direction he will go next, where his trial will take place, and why Ryan is allowed to remain at home while waiting his trial. She attempts to clarify, telling him that if he doesn't sit down, they will have to stop talking. He then begins to shout and slap his hot cocoa across the room.
Porn photos.
No.
Would they be happy you saw those photos?
How do you know that?
How did it feel to see?
How do you think?
In particular, how does it make you feel?
She wasn't my type. The picture got passed around the school. I don't know, she fancied him. I meant from other girls.
When an officer enters, Jamie expresses regret. He asks Bryony whether she would like Jamie removed from the room. Jamie requests more hot chocolate in response. It is obvious that she is unhappy as she exits the room. When the officer who met her emerges, she requests that he use the cameras to peek into the room where Jamie is. The officer tells her there is no audio while she is viewing, but he then discusses body language and how individuals conceal a lot but may use their bodies to reveal the truth. She comes back again. She informs him inside the room that her sole purpose is to learn about his comprehension. She may not ask him questions, he says, adding that he understands. She returns to the topic of masculinity and the attitudes that males have about women. He responds that it's okay, he doesn't deserve it for yelling. But she gets up and says she's forgotten his hot chocolate. Jamie explains that his father treats his mother well. Neither he nor Jamie have any female acquaintances. She wants to know his thoughts on women. He claims that he likes them and that he would want a girlfriend if she asked him to. He claims that he would take her to the movies but not write home after Brownie asks if he would love to kiss her, and he counter asks if it is okay for her to ask that question. Following that, she inquires what someone normal at his age would do sexually with the boy or girl. He responds by kissing and caressing. When she presses for additional information, he clarifies that it's common to touch the behind and chest, mostly above clothing. He claims to have completed all of it as well. He informs Brownie that he felt the chest of two females after they showed them to him, and that one of them touched him through his pants. He denied when asked if he enjoyed it. In response to further questions, he acknowledges that he just lied and that nothing of such occurred. Instead, he said that he and everyone else had seen pictures of these two girls. She inquires as to whether Katie was one of those two females. He becomes irate and queries how she could have known it and how she made the guess. She said that she just inquired rather than speculating. He claims that Katie wasn't his type when he asked if he was attracted to her. She was flat, he remarked. He goes on to state that it wasn't him but a kid who she emailed the picture to share it with everyone else. Jamie is asked by Brownie if he believes that women are drawn to him. He denies such assertion. Then he describes himself as unattractive. He becomes irate once more as she attempts to find out how he feels about being unattractive. He tosses his chair across the room and accuses her of forcing words into his mouth. Jamie asks her what she's doing as Bryony gestures him away after the officer shouts to him from the door. She invited him to sit down once more, but he marched violently across the room. If he wants her to, she says she'll go. He doesn't respond. Bryony discusses Jamie's earlier statement that, despite having his buddies Tommy and Ryan, he is not well liked. All three of them were bullied, he claimed. They said they had tripped, been shoved, and spat on. He responds that he needs an Instagram account in order to view other people's profiles when she asks him why he has one. She claims that he follows a lot of models and ladies. She inquires as to why he shares pictures of himself and how Katie reacted to his comments. She shows him screenshots and pulls out her goods. She displays a remark Katie left on his Facebook page. He mentions Facebook, but she reiterates it's Instagram, saying that she is red. He begins to provoke her and inquires as to whether she was afraid when he yelled. When Jamie tries to inquire about the emojis Katie sent, he continues to insist that she is afraid of a 13-year-old. She inquires what the kidney bean emojis mean. He claims that Katie was acting as though Jamie belonged to a honesty club which supports the idea that women don't care about or desire us. Everyone continued talking about incels, he claims, but after researching it, he wasn't impressed. He goes on to explain the meaning of each emoji saying, want love, won't get it. Additionally, 80-20 means that 80% of women are drawn to 20% of males. However, he doesn't believe that incels are correct. Jamie responds that it was because he is unattractive when Bryony asks why Katie did it to him. Then he starts saying that you can't believe videos and that he didn't kill her. He claims that while he should have murdered her, he chose not to. He said that once the picture circulated, he asked Katie out. He went to ask her to the fair and apologized about the picture. She could like him if she were weak, he thought. He claims she is flat, but Bryony claims she felt he didn't like her. Despite this, he didn't mind. He claims that Katie simply laughed and said she wasn't that desperate when he asked her to the fair. She then began using emoticons in her messages. He claims that while she was afraid that night when he held the knife, he kept his distance from her. He claims that although he truly wanted to touch every area of her body, he refrained from doing so, even though most lads would have. That shows he's an improved, charismatic character. He then abruptly begins to claim that he is simply exhausted and that none of what he's just said was intended. Brownie responds, "Do you know what death is?" She clarifies that regardless of what he says about her, Katie is now permanently gone. He claims he didn't mean to treat her badly. She then quickly informs him that their session is coming to an end and advises him to utilize any available mental health resources. He becomes agitated, but she clarifies that she must now present her case to the judge. When the police try to remove him, he persists in asking Brownie a question. He asks whether she likes him. He becomes increasingly anxious and tells her to make up her mind when she doesn't respond. He continues to inquire as to whether Bryony likes him even after the officer had to detain him in order to remove him. He instructs her to let his father know he is okay before he is taken from the room. She sobs when he departs, but she gathers herself and walks out of the room. 13 months have passed as the culmination of adolescence starts. After being informed that it is his birthday by Manda, Christine Tremaco, Eddie Miller, Stephen Graham enters the building. Eddie gives a hug and becomes flirtatious before sitting down.
He's put there.
Along with a fiver, he receives a birthday card from Jen and his father. Jamie Owen Cooper has also sent Eddie a card. Emily Pierce's character Lisa interrupts to inform her parents that graffiti has been painted on the vehicle. Eileen Biddy Iredale, the neighbor, says she didn't witness anything. Manda is instructed by Eddie to contact the police. Manda informs the cops that nonce was written in the graffiti. Since they are not required to come out, Manda inquires as to whether they ought to snap a photo. On the phone, she laboriously sorts out the specifics. She then instructs Lisa to snap 3 photos and send them to Sam via email. Eddie encourages Manda to think of Lisa as she enters the house. They talk about Jamie standing in front of a large screen and having to take the stand. According to Lisa, her mother says she can find Eddie a job even though he maintains he doesn't require her help.
You know, want a cup of tea?
Fuck off then, you nosy owl.
Eddie thinks it would be 10 times worse to return to Liverpool. Since they haven't done anything wrong, he won't move. Before heading outside to tidy up the mess, Eddie tells Lisa she shouldn't be listening. Lisa tells Manda that she has been messaging Billy. Eddie and the vehicle are discussed. Lisa is unable to identify the intended norms. Manda speaks about using the Hoover to vacuum Jamie's room another day. Lisa claims she is unable to enter. Manda asks if Billy is taking care of her. Lisa claims to take care of herself. The huge sponge is called for by Eddie. After locating the large sponge, Eddie returns outside to remove the paint from his vehicle. As he cleans the vehicle, he jokes with the neighbors. Eddie is called announced by 2 bike-riding youths before they take off. Eddie returns inside after making his way back slowly and catching one of them. He informs Mother that the paint isn't peeling off after entering the house. Eddie also doesn't think bleach will work despite Manda's suggestion. Eddie wants to get a paint remover tool from Wainwright's. He makes Lisa accompany him. The family decides to reclaim the day as they travel along. Lisa is urged by Eddie to play some tunes with a good bottom line. When they return from Wainwright's, he wants to go out. Eddie offers other suggestions such as going ice skating, visiting the zoo, and climbing a hill. They decided to visit the photos instead. Eddie has everything prepared for the day. Lisa is interested in learning Chinese. She selects a song with Manda's assistance. As Eddie drives in the direction of Wainwright's, the bladder goes on. Manda starts discussing Aha. Eddie claims to be a talented dancer. He began to sleep and slide on the floor, according to Manda. Eddie immediately places the blame on the red and white bowling shoes he bought to match his wig from a charity store. He was unaware that the shoes lacked traction. As the narrative progresses, Manda joins in on the song. Lisa finds out that Manda gave Eddie a Frenchie for the first time. At last, Eddie pulls into the local Wainwright parking lot.
Been going through. Don't fucking laugh. Take your fucking bike as well.
Eddie?
He enters and looks for a tool to remove the paint. They parted ways. Terry Kayamore is asked to assist Eddie. Terry believes that Quint, Joe Barber, a co-worker, might be able to assist. Quint claims that before applying paint thinner or powerful alcohol, he must hose it. He walks him through the entire process of removing paint from his car. Quint claims that the parents are to fault. Eddie asks him to point out the location of the blue paint. Quint just recognizes the person he is speaking to. He claims to support his son. Quint doesn't believe Jamie was responsible. He talks about the bones in the penetration places and the stab wounds. They have Quint's support because he claims to have seen pictures of her. Quint believes he should hire a reputable attorney, and because many people would be willing to donate, crowdsourcing would be beneficial. All Eddie wants is the paint. He understands and frowns as he slowly makes his way outside. Eddie doesn't hear anything Lisa says to him when she follows him. Eddie admits to Lisa that he is a little peckish as he checks out. Manda joins them outdoors after purchasing a plant. Eddie runs over to grab Fredo, Austin Haynes, as he notices him nearby. That's what he said Fredo did to his vehicle. According to Fredo, it was only for amusement. Eddie urges him not to do that to anyone and shakes him about. He then hurls him to the ground while shouting for him to avoid his relatives. Eddie flings his bicycle in his direction. He returns to the van, ignoring Manda. Eddie slings the paint can all over the car after opening it. After taking Manda's plans, he puts it in the vehicle. Eddie is asked by a store employee whether he will clean up the mess. After shouting at everyone, Eddie takes off in the van that is coated in paint. After riding around in solitude for a few minutes, Jamie calls to wish his father a happy birthday. Although he has been receiving some teasing in the yard, Jamie claims that the librarian is okay with him. He has to talk to certain individuals. According to Eddie, they will eat breakfast before heading to the photos. It just happened, Jamie explains. He has made the decision to modify his plea. When no one answers, he repeats it. After a while, Manda and Lisa greet each other. Manda shifts the topic to Jamie's intolerances and the cuisine. Lisa questions about his constant attendance at the gym. Moments later, Jamie must bid farewell. Jamie apologizes to Eddie when he returns home. The call is cut off. Lisa and Manda stay in the vehicle while Eddie brings the plant inside. Manda is adamant that he will be okay. She enters and starts crying. Eddie claims that he hasn't correctly mended the windows when Manda walks upstairs. He is not terrible for 50. Manda remarks when he inquires about his clothing. They talk about seeing the photographs. According to Manda, Jamie sounded better than he had the week before. She says it's a little better now that a choice has been made. Manda questions Eddie about his behavior. She claims that he saw the footage when he was with Jamie. All of this is not something Eddie wants to repeat. Manda is adamant that this is not Eddie. Although Jamie's guilty plea is likely for the best, she is aware that Eddie is upset. He saw what Eddie saw. He was unwilling to accept it. Manda is concerned about their survival. Jamie, according to Manda, never left his room. He would enter, slam the door, and head straight for his computer upstairs. At 1 in the morning, she would see that the light was on. He had school in the morning. Manda would inform him when he knocked. Eddie claims that she was unaware of what he was viewing on that phone. He talks about the man who called him and gave advice on how to handle ladies. You can't watch them all the time, Eddie says. Jamie and Eddie, according to Manda, have awful tempers. Eddie wishes that he hadn't given it to him. Manda believes they ought to have halted it occasionally. She can't blame themselves, Eddie assures her. But according to Manda, they made him. Eddie describes how, when he was Jamie's age, his father used to abuse him. He made a self-promise to never treat his children that way. Eddie wonders if he is improved. They are tempted to be, according to Manda. Eddie talks about how awful Jamie was when they went to football. Eddie was unable to look at him since everyone would laugh at him. He believed that boxing would help, so he took him to do it. Approximately 10 minutes have passed. They discuss Jimmy's passion for sketching. Eddie used to play football with him once they bought him a computer. When the business took off, that ended. Manda did not improve while she was at home earlier. She was an excellent mother, according to Eddie. He claims that they believed they were doing appropriately and that Jamie was secure in his room. Despite being excellent parents, Manda claims they still created him. Manda thinks Jamie knew Eddie wouldn't believe it, so he wanted him in there with him. Eddie couldn't have shielded him, in her opinion. Eddie wonders if they ought to have done more. Manda believes it would be beneficial if they acknowledged that they ought to have done more. Eddie continues to see the little youngster. Eddie claims that he believed Jamie when he insisted that it wasn't him. Eddie brings up the tape once more. He believes that Manda would have performed better if Jamie had chosen her. Lisa enters to see how they are doing. She describes her attire to them. Eddie tells Lisa he is sorry. He is adamant about getting the van sprayed. Lisa brings up the children and claims that she is Jamie's sister. Everyone bothers her. According to Manda, they intended to depart after seeing the photos. Lisa recommends that they rent a movie from their house. Eddie finds himself outside Jamie's room alone. He enters Jamie's room, sits on the bed, and sobs. He continues to weep. Eddie apologizes to his kid and he claims he ought to have performed better. Adolescence, the sad story of Jamie and his family comes to a close in episode 4. Beginning as a promising murder investigation with a sympathetic suspect, it devolves into a terrifying examination of toxic masculinity, harassment in high school, and parenthood. Jamie's family's struggle to resume regular activities following his detention are the main topic of the last chapter. They have troublesome and inquisitive neighbors. By making fun of the Millers, the rowdy youngsters are having a great time. And although Eddie attempts to disregard that aspect of his life, he is on the verge of a collapse. However, the others also make Amanda bear some of the blame as the housewife who feels bad about not assisting her struggling kid. The Millers chose to embrace Jamie's choice to enter a guilty plea, look on the other optimistic side, and let go of their despairing attitude in the closing scene, which is rather melancholy. The Millers choose to accept their new situation and continue their lives by remaining indoors and snuggling the toy in bed. For such a complex narrative, the ending is surprisingly realistic and fulfilling.